Whoa, what, man? What, Mike G? The music stop, man?
That was getting a little crazy. It was a little crazy.
Hey, so we want to welcome Abigail French to the show. What's up, Abby?
Hi, guys. It's really good to be here.
Hey, everybody, before we get started, we're going to kind of touch on the no grade system in the school to think about maybe we need to get rid of grades. We're going to talk about education equality and just maybe we have reverted backwards or maybe we're going forwards, but we need to kind of figure it out. And then lastly, we're going to look at maybe if standardized tests should be stay or go. And the 21st century, look kind of at the history. Are we educationally being innovative and moving, and with all this innovation, is it really helping us? Or historically, will we be remembered as the people that had all the technology but never used it for our own knowledge? And with that being said, I want to introduce Abigail French. She's hailing out of Virginia, and it's freezing there. So, Abby, if you can give our audience a little of your background and what you do, and we're going to get started.
Well, I just want to thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm a big fan. I've got the T-shirt, okay, which is a very nice quality T-shirt, by the way. But I'm here today because you and I, Vince, we've had lots of talks before, as both of us being history teachers and passionate about education and helping the next generation move forward. That's what we've connected on in the past. But I am currently teaching 7th grade U.S. History 2 in Winchester, Virginia. This year I made a job switch to a new district, new school, new grade level. And I have had an interesting kind of start to the year, but midway through now, and I love it. I'm so glad I made the switch. And those kind of bumpy moments getting started were the investment of time and patience and building relationships has paid off. I feel like I'm getting kind of back the dividends now from that, and the students I hope feel the same way. I think they do. I'm really passionate about education reform and how we can. What we can do differently in our classrooms so that we're reaching every single student and seeing them for the potential strengths and brilliance and unique qualities that they come to us with. I think that too often in education, as a means of control and a means of making the system work, we lose sight of the individuals that are there. We often, in methods to control behavior or control outcomes, we move away from what should support and facilitate a student becoming more of who they are. And we do that to the extent that we often limit self-expression and the fun and joy of learning. We cut that out. And so
I agree. Yeah, because I remember I went to high school. It wasn't fun. We had stacks of homework, and it's like, what was that? I didn't even learn. I was tired. I hated it. So, as to say, we have to change things. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I think back, like a lot of times when I reflect about what kinds of learning is most powerful and where motivation comes from with students, it's never from someone else, saying, I want you to get excited about this. I mean, we do say that, but it doesn't really happen intrinsically like that. If you go back to like watching a child, like a young child play, building a fort, building a sandcastle, playing with Legos, and then you start asking a bunch of questions and getting in the middle of it, or even if they feel like you are somehow evaluating them in some sense, or telling them what to do, they often shut down. They'll just stop doing what they're doing because it's coming from within them. And so how do we as educators tap into that kind of brilliance and creativity in a child, or now students, within the classroom setting or school setting? And I think we do that by creating partnerships with students, letting students lead their learning.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just like, instead of making them fit the curriculum, what about the curriculum fitting them?
Yeah, and you made a great point, because we were talking before the show, and we're talking about standardized tests. And I told you that after me and you had a conversation about a couple of weeks ago, I actually addressed my students and I said, listen, what if we had to get rid of standardized tests and everybody had to kind of do a different merit on to get into college? The pushback from my students that are in the 10% of top excel, those that in the 10% that excel, were totally against getting rid of standardized tests. However, we know, and this is the data has proven, that everybody is not a good standardized test taker, but yet we put that benchmark on students to carry them to the next level of what school they get into or how they're perceived due to the test. So I just kind of, from Abby, from your standpoint, what's your perspective? Because we have more students now that we identify have learning disabilities. And now, and I'm not talking massive learning disabilities, but just the way they process information. How do you think that, we can improve or kind of fix those things going forward?
Well, I think the whole standardized testing, whether it's the testing for college entrance, or whether it's the state standardized testing, I know there's a need for data. I get that. There's a need to know where we are with something so that we can address where we're going to go. But so much of those are very inequitable forms of assessment. They, I guess, for the student that has the means for tutoring, or for parents at home, or systems of support that can help them prepare for these, that help them, if you're talking about elementary school children that have proper nutrition and good night's sleep, and people that are there making sure that happens. If all the conditions were the same, I still think the assessments would be not really worth that much, but at least they would, there would be more of an equitable outcome. But the way that these are designed are more harmful than they are positive or accurate at giving us an actual representation of learning. They don't do that. They take a snapshot on any given day, and they cut out every variable with students when it comes to, what they're bringing on that day.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's good.
No. Because what about and I want to just get in there real quick and ask you, what about the artistic, students? Because, I have a lot of kids in my students in my class, they're artistic. And when I mean that term, I mean, they are artsy, they can draw, they can sing, they can play instruments, but they're not really strong in math and science. And I think they get lost in the shuffle because we with standardized tests, is because we don't embrace that it's not a part of the curriculum or data point for them to go to school. And I just want to kind of get your thought on that. And I apologize for cutting in on you there.
No, you're good. I get really fired up about this stuff, so I could keep going. So I think that one of the things that's really, just it's sad, really, that we could have students graduate from high school for 13 years of schooling. And what do they have to show for that? They've got a transcript. They've got a GPA. They don't have something that shows these higher competencies and skills and experiences, these rich experiences. And so for your students that have this high, talent and creativity and gift for art or for, small engine repair or for whatever it is that isn't, considered the academic focus of your core classes, like that's so unfortunate, and it's so misleading to just walk out with a piece of paper that's what your 13 years has been whittled down to. It shouldn't be that. And
I
our
agree.
system needs to do a better job of creating, I guess, products that can capture learning fully.
So do you think the structure of the education is it's a little more, it's a collapsing
I
more and
feel like
more?
I just feel like it hasn't evolved with the way that teaching has evolved and learning
Correct.
has evolved. I don't think that we have the systems in place like like grade representation. I am passionate about the ungrading movement. I think that many times the grades that are traditional grades that are given are more destructive and more harmful, and they're arbitrary, uh, where they don't even need to be. We should be fueling kids with creativity, opportunities to explore, and letting them lead, like helping develop their leadership skills. Oh, hey, Doc Ron. Anyway, so that's I get distracted. One of my favorite follows on Twitter. Anyway, all I'm saying is that I think that kids deserve better than the report card system that we've been doing, grading systems that we have had traditionally in place. I feel like there's more evolved ways of having students represent their learning and progress than what we currently have offer. You know what I'm saying? Like what's available. Like I still have to work within a system of turning in this many, certain number of grades, because it has to go in the system that way. I have to plug that into what the school district needs.
So the question is, do you feel that private schools or public schools are more different? Do you think that the private schools are investing more to the kids than they do private? Or,
To be honest with you,
public, excuse me.
well, I don't really know a whole lot about the private school systems traditionally. Like I don't know that. I do have like good friends that are teaching in independent or private schools, and I know that there is a lot more freedom in certain ways. And so I know that there are more opportunities, a greater range of focus that can happen for teachers and students in those situations. But I have never experienced that myself because I've never worked in a private school setting.
Hey, so Ab, you hit a couple different things earlier, and we were talking on your post on your Twitter site. You had a post about no grade system, and I've had a discussion with Jennifer Blaylock a couple of months ago, and we had the same discussion about the no grade system. And she's an advocate not to have a grade system, but to actually try to define a child's abilities as the grading system. So just for a quick synopsis, what's your take on looking at other systems other than saying A, B, C, D, or F? And
How does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So one of the things I think that is really effective, much more so than me giving a child an A, B, C, or whatever, or a grade or a point or some number, is teaching children how to be self-assessors. Teaching kids how to self-assess their own work, their own, quality of work or amount that they've learned, the knowledge, vast kind of like idea or concept. Did they get it or not? Like can be good at that, and they should be, because it's their learning. And so I think students as self-assessors, that's one of the areas I really work in developing with my 7th graders. I also am a big proponent of students, student narratives, asking students to narrate, capture what did they learn from their learning experiences. When I was teaching Reconstruction, I wanted to know if my kids got that, and I asked for a narrative. I asked them to write a narrative about what they've learned, and I looked for key components in that. But I also wanted them to self-assess that. And so that's one thing I love. I think is so powerful, is when I turn it over to them, like, well, you're going to assess yourself. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, you're going to determine whether or not, or where on a competency or proficiency scale, where do you think you are right now with that?
Oh yeah, then that's great, and it leads right into the next question I got for you. Is we were talking about education equality, and when you throw that term out there, it is so funny depending on what geographical area you're in. People say,
Mhm.
well, we're fine, we're a lot further than we were 20, 30 years ago. And I asked the question, are we really? Because there's a commercial they just played for the NFL last night when I was watching the 49ers win. Yeah, baby. They showed a commercial and they were talking about the lack of education equality, and that the NFL is actually getting involved in trying to help get schools that are in areas like Detroit, schools that are in areas like Louisiana that have low bandwidth, not 5G,
Right.
and they don't have nuclear families. They have the single parent. They have the foster kid. So you might take my question to you is, what do you see, and what are some of the things you think we could do better to get to education equality, Abigail?
Well, I think that technology is a huge um, way to address inequity, the inequities that are there, and by teaching students skills with technology, skills with how to use it, how to create and produce things using technology is a great equalizer. But one of the things that the pandemic did that we know, I mean, we all know this, that one of the areas that 22 months ago that it was exposed is that there were so many families in our district and in our communities that did not have access to the internet, or didn't have devices that they could rely on, that
Yes.
were in working conditions, so that students could, I mean, not only could they get information, families needed to get information, but students could have remote learning experiences. And so, and it's appalling. It's appalling to realize that up until that point, March 2020, that we didn't have a better handle on that we were rolling out these one-to-one device programs in these school systems with families that didn't have any way to utilize them.
Yeah, but
Um,
technology illiteracy. So, I mean, so you touch on a key thing. Let's talk about technology literacy. We really found out during the pandemic how illiterate a lot of people were when it came to technology, as in just, working with systems, because it was assumed that everyone knows how to turn on a laptop. Everybody has a home computer. And then what we found out is, and I got to watch it firsthand, is that people that live in depressed areas or socially economically challenged areas, they don't have the iPhone or the Macintosh or all those cool gadgets in the house for technology. And for some reason, I think as a society, we were kind of naive thinking, oh yeah, everybody's on the same playing field, So what's your thoughts on that?
well, I mean, like I was saying, I mean, schools have done a really good job in wanting to get devices into the hands of their students, but did they have Wi-Fi at home to be able to utilize that? Right. So that was a big thing. And I think that exposed that, and it's been a positive. I mean, not that it's without challenges. It's still without challenge. There's still families that don't have access to the internet, and that's almost like it should be like a human like need, because of all kinds of reasons, because of safety and information that people need. But so expose that, and I think we are tackling that, and I think there's also been a lot of um, partnerships with community resources to tackle that problem. So it's not just the schools, but it's not just the communication companies. It's people working together, and certainly we saw that come together to feed students during the pandemic. The schools became the hub. You and I talked about what role do schools have. Is it different now than it was in the 1920s or 1940s? But more and more in today's 2022, that schools are the hub for all kinds of resources and services provided to students, whether it's special ed services or go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
No. That's fine. It's just I'm getting into it now. I'm like, wow. So it's just the main fact. Who are we to blame now? Who are we to blame for all this shortcomings of technology, shortcomings of stuff that was supposed to be ready for We never know what might happen. Tomorrow, everybody be home at school or at home.
Hey, this was like
Who
this
fell
was
short, do you think?
well, I don't know who necessarily like. I just think that a lot was exposed, a lot of need was exposed during this pandemic, and how it's not really about blaming from the past, but how do we go forward now so that now that we know, and we have to do better by our families, by our communities. And it does need to fall on the shoulders of, I think, multiple public services. Uh,
Yes.
and public education is one of them. We are filling the need in a lot of ways, in a lot of different roles for our families and our students.
Oh yeah, but as we go on forward, you said the key thing. Oh, so here's the historian in me, and you know how it is. We should learn from our past, right? So hey, there was a couple quotes I had thrown up there from Martin Luther King. As we won't make our history. You're part of your history as you evolve. So there's so many things that we should have learned. So now I think educational systems used to need to build budgets. I think we cut education is like one of the first things cut at the government at the federal level. And then when you cut into education, you don't have the resources. Honestly, I think the pandemic woke us up that education is not something that we need to keep cutting, but we actually need to make it evolve. Invest, right. That's a great word. We should really be investing in our next generation. And I struggle as a historian all the time is that the lack of investment we have in young people, but unless they live in an affluent area. And I just don't know how we get there. Go ahead.
So it's so, that's something that's so upsetting and frustrating, that the amount of, since we fund education with property taxes, which is so problematic, because depending on your zip code depends on whether or not you have money for investing in schools and infrastructure and programs and resources. And we've got to do better on that every single year. When it comes to budget season, I'm out there and along with lots of other educators that are speaking up for what we need, the programs that are vital, and also for teachers in the profession to stay in the profession, to acquire new teachers. We have a huge teacher shortage. People aren't going into education, and those of us that are in education are being pushed out. One, because the cost of living doesn't match the way we are paid, and two, because so much is demanded of teachers, and we're the first to get blamed for when problems are exposed. And so why would professionals want to come into a system where there's often very little thanks and the pay is so inadequate?
I like that. Yep. Tell them it's French. Tell them.
Right, and the thing is that you hit the key thing, the livable wage. So I work with the Troops to Teachers here in Florida, the guy that runs the program here, and his name's Ron also. And that was one of the discussions we had, is that, if you historically look at it, after World War II, a majority of the World War II vets went back into the teaching system. And then in the 60s, Vietnam vets, and same with the Korean War vets. And as you looked at Gulf War vets, we still had a few of them going to the teaching profession. Since we've had almost plus 20 years of war, we don't have a large number of veterans wandering back into the teaching profession. One, because of all the rules. Two, because the premise of the way, I'd say, discipline is handled now with some of the students, and it's a slippery slope these days, because of just the engagements, that so many people are now kind of steering away from education. And you're right, there is a huge vacuum coming for teachers in education here. And if we don't get ahead of it and we don't decide we're going to fix it, I'd say in 10 years, we're going to have a massive problem, which we already do right now, just finding subs.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be sooner than 10 years, but you touched on something I want to say. You talked about discipline, and I want to go back to the pluses for when you turn teaching and learning when you make it a student and teacher partnership, and you invite students to be like the leaders of their own learning, and they are self-directing, and it takes a while because they've been told what to do for so long that it's really uncomfortable for kids in the beginning to be like, well, what do you want to learn about, or how do you want to show me your learning? They want a step-by-step process to follow instead of turning on those innovative, creative skills and thinking of their own. But when they do get into it, when they finally, make that connection and they're able to really start exploring again and finding the joy of learning, guess what you don't have? Guess what you don't have when you're not trying to make students do everything you want them to do and you start letting them lead?
Well,
you don't have discipline problems. You're not classroom managing, you're classroom leading. And that is the difference. And it's so compelling. And as a teacher, yes, you have to give up some of that control. But what you get is actual learning and excitement and joy. And it's a different feel. It's a different feel. And that's addictive, by the way. That feel, you'll chase it once you get it, because that's real learning going on.
That's you're on point, because you touch on critical thinking, and I hate that term because it has become like this buzzword that we've used in education when we really need to give kids freedom of thought. And so lately in my classes, I give them the lesson, and then I say, hey, come up with whatever. And they say, well, how many sentences do I have to have, or how many of this? I said, look,
yeah, I always get asked that.
I was like, go as far as you think what it looks right. I said, but make sure you answer the question. Make sure that you capture the question, you answer it with an articulate manner. And then some of them are like, wow, and so we work on I have different projects I use different terms. But with the one thing that I wanted to say was, you're absolutely right. The more freedom I give them to create their products, and sometimes some of them actually use artwork, and they say, are you going to count off because I didn't write as much as I drew? And I'm thinking to myself, you were creative. You used it. There's no single way to learn. So I love the way you've just framed all of that about, students having a little bit of freedom to just keep going. So what kind of groups and are you mentoring? What kind of foundations or educational programs are you working with right now before we get here to wrap up here?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that.
Well,
what do you mean?
I mean, like, are you like spearheading any groups? Because I see you all the time on social media, on podcasts for different subjects. So are you working with any major projects or anything right now?
Different things I've had going on recently. I've been doing a lot of presenting recently with some of my emerging leaders through ASCD, different people, but it's been an awesome experience. We've been kind of making a circuit of different state affiliate ASCD chapters. So like New Jersey, New Hampshire, Virginia, Washington State coming up, presenting on a couple different things. And those topics that I have had the good fortune to collaborate on have been about using performance assessments over traditional grading systems, right, or assessments. I've also presented. One of my favorite things I did recently was with Virginia's State Teacher of the Year in 2021, Andrea Johnson. We teamed up together at the local state BSACD conference and presented on our walk to visible equity in our classroom as two middle-aged white teachers. What do we need to do to make sure that we are reaching all of our students? And it wasn't that we were experts. It was more, what experts do we go to help inform us?
That's
and it was really powerful.
No, and that's what I like about you. But before we get out of here, me and Mike were talking, and I told him that you actually have another job, and that it's a top secret, and that you are a snake whisperer.
Well, I think I'm more of a snake rescuer, but
yeah. Cause I saw this right here. I was like, what's going on here? Look at that, braver than me. I wouldn't do that. What?
Well,
what? No.
That snake was just hanging out, doing her own thing, and the neighborhood kids were playing right past me. There's like a pine area, and that snake was just doing her thing, not bothering anybody until the kids started playing there. And then, people were running to get like
shovels.
Yes, to take care of that snake. And so I ran down there as fast as I could.
That's good.
My daughter came and got me because she knows I would have died myself if that had happened. So I ran down there, and I was actually barefoot at the time, caught the snake, and then relocated it. And so it's a little bit like, if you move a turtle out of the road. I just moved the snake out of harm's way.
But now, hold up. Abigail, you funny, because I seen you in another video on Instagram. You out walking and you just stopped and start playing with a snake. So, I like how you just played that off. And, you're so political. You could have been a general.
Right? Ask my 4 kids. They might call me general. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, well, that's all right, because when you become a grandmother, you can be like my mom. She runs around calling herself General Mom now, and not a grandmother. Yes,
not a grandmother, general.
Not
I like
that. So, hey, we're done here. You are a great guest, and and Abigail, if you have any advice for any teachers that were listening that are going to watch this later, and for anybody coming in the system as a teacher, because you already got time served, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them that that there are so many parallels, right? There's so many parallels about how teachers want to be treated as experts in their content, as just so many different ways that we want to be seen, we want to be known, we want our administrators to value what we bring to the table, but our students are the same way, and that to look for those parallels always, and to know that the very thing that group of students needs from you as a teacher is for you to be engaged with them and to be fully yourself, and not to be remember all those old things we used to hear, don't smile till Thanksgiving, and once you let go of control, you can never get it back. So all of that's a bunch of crap. Okay. And that you will, when kids can connect to you, when they find when they know that you really like them and care for them, that will happen in return for you in spades. So give of yourself, be yourself. That's who they need. And you'll get that from them because that's what you need.
Oh my, you're spot on. And you know what? You make such great points. Abigail French, it was a great time having you on.
Thank you
I'm from Louisiana. I don't know no better. So as me and Mike G always say, keep it
rolling. See you later, guys. See you.
Guys.
So this shirt is more than a shirt. Embrace the power. MyShopify.com.